Welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. This is Alex, and as you can see, we're experimenting with the new software. And our real problem with life here today is that um, both Google and YouTube are in the process of dropping the software that we've been using for 5 years to support our efforts on the Astro Imaging channel. And we've been going to a lot of work to figure out how to um, get alternative ways to do what we've been doing. And we thought we had it, and that's why we started. We actually started this about 15 minutes early tonight, and I've been diddling around with it ever since. We had a couple of experiments with it that worked, but it didn't work tonight. So rather than continuing that madness, let's go to one of these two presentations here that I'm supposed to be giving you tonight. And welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. I want to tell you that tonight we're going to be talking about one-shot color versus LRGB. There's a lot of talk on that on cloudy nights is what inspired this. What actually inspired it was that our regular presenter tonight, Bill Long, couldn't be here, and we had to reschedule him for, I think, October 18th, but I'm not sure about that. He was going to talk about low cost and inexpensive software for us, but he can't do that. So I pulled out one of my presentations on one-shot color versus LRGB, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But just as I always do at this time of the show, I wanted to remind you that you can follow us on Rumble Talk, although I'm not sure you can follow us on Rumble Talk tonight because things are messed up. And if you did, you could make comments. But a better way to do it would be to head on over to um, uh, the YouTube channel itself and look to see what we're doing over on the YouTube channel. And you can see that, among other things, you can make all these conversations. But the really nice thing about it is that these conversations stay with the program. And so people can see what we were commenting on, what questions were being asked, and things like that. Also, we had a tremendous outpouring of generosity from our supporters last week. Basically, we aren't going to make this a mercenary thing. We just aren't in it for the money. We never will be, and we aren't going to do that. But we do need some money to run this thing. Yeah, we could probably all do it out of our back pockets and stuff like that. But as been pointed out, um, we don't want this to be an effort of just Adam or just Tolga or just Alex or Eric or Terry or Molly or anybody. We want this to be an entity that continues in itself. And so we're trying to make a nonprofit organization, and we've applied for being a nonprofit organization. And we do ask that you hit the buttons down here every now and then. Not a big deal. Just do if you can now and then, because each of these things cost something, and appreciate it. Um, if you look on the upcoming shows part of the website, you will find what the shows are coming up in the near and distant future. And I wanted to remind you I wanted to remind you also that we've got a workshop coming up. This workshop has got about what, 4 entries, I think, on it so far, including my own. It's M13. And here you can, if you click the workshop link, you can go over and get Alex McConaughey's M13 data, and it'll download for you, and then you can process it and you can submit stuff. But tonight's show is going to be one-shot color or LRGB, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And Tolga or anybody out there, do we have any paperwork or business to do before I start the other presentation?
I fixed the link in the website, so that should be the
Okay.
current. Anybody
And,
want?
and if maybe people will start getting in from, okay, where's my other?
So the
Are we
the
ready to go?
the live page on the website should be showing this one right now. I
Okay.
skipped that one.
Back to a nice, simple presentation.
Yeah, go to your presentation. Yeah, go
Should,
back to normal.
should we be taking one-shot color or LRGB? One-shot color has come a long way since they first started using it on DSLRs a ways back. And LRGB, of course, is the long-time standard for the way people do things and stuff like that. But which one is right? Well, look at it. It says which one is for me, and the emphasis should be on the me, because frankly, I can't tell you what you should be doing. I am not capable of that. Um, Ultimately, what you all want to do is get to the pretty picture in the middle. So as you're standing here trying to make a decision, and you want to decide whether you're going to go with um, you want to decide whether you're going to go with the LRGB filters, dedicated filters, or the color filter array. Which one is most likely to get you to that picture? Well, from this show, you're not going to get any recommendations. You're going to hear about a lot of the implications, and you're going to get a lot of information and a lot of discussion. But I'm going to disqualify myself from really knowing the answer, and I'm certainly going to disqualify myself from knowing the answer for you. You're just going to get discussion and opinion, and it's going to be my opinion from here. And I hope that you are sitting there over on Rumble Talk or on YouTube, commenting regularly on where I'm wrong, where I should have said something differently, any of those kinds of things. And we also have to ask, how much does it matter whether you're using a camera, one shot color camera, or separate LRGB filters? We're going to discuss the implications of choosing one or the other, but we're not going to make any decisions for you. I want to remind you again, you guys have heard me talk about this before, the Dunning-Kruger effect. When we first start out, we're kind of low in confidence, and we're certainly low in knowledge. But it seems like, particularly if you read the postings on cloudy nights, people rapidly, without much knowledge and skills, grow in confidence. They find out that they can start doing things that are, hey, and they start telling other people what the truth is. Eventually, they get way up there in confidence, not so far along in knowledge and skills. They're at the top of what's called Mount Stupid. And then they start realizing that, oh, maybe there's a different situation that applies here. Oh, hey, wait a minute. I didn't know that they've invented some new stuff about this. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have repeated what that guy's been telling me. And frankly, I'm there. I hope to think I'm like it right about here, because the more I study this stuff, the more I realize that I don't know very much. But you see, I'm not all the way at the bottom of this pit. I at least realize that I'm, I've been over Mount Stupid. And so I've got something to share with you, but I'm not going to pretend that I know everything. Look it up someday. It's Dunning-Kruger effect. It's kind of interesting. Um, Ask yourself what you want in an image. You want composition, detail, contrast, low color, low imperfections, noise and stuff like that. Okay, we all know that. Which one shot color or LRGB, is going to get you just that? Well, I'll tell you what, as far as the message, you know what Adam Block told us about a few weeks back, a couple of months now? You got to have a message. You got to be trying to tell people something. Can you tell them any better in LRGB than you can in one shot color? I don't think so. Not that much. Your compositions can be virtually identical. The amount of detail you can get out of either one, I'll say that they're about the same. In fact, because you can get better contrast, color, and lower imperfections probably when you really know what you're doing out of an LRGB picture, maybe there is a difference, but we'll talk about that as we go along. You see this picture down along the bottom, you'll see a whole bunch of places where people they've taken the same bit of data, and this is one of the Astro Imaging Channel challenges a while back. They've taken the same bit of data and they've interpreted it differently. But I can tell you for sure that had I been using a one-shot color camera, I couldn't have used a hydrogen alpha to get the data that makes some of this stand out so starkly. The some of the detail that you get, some of the contrast between the one color of red and the other color of red, simply wouldn't have been there without the hydrogen alpha. And I don't think I could have gotten the hydrogen alpha all that well with the one shot color camera. So there might be a difference. Color and low imperfections. I've talked about this again. I've talked about this before. What kind of photographer are you? Are you a cell phone and tablet photographer? Are you a computer monitor and web posting
Alex,
photographer? Yeah.
are you supposed to be sharing a screen?
Yeah.
We're looking at you right now.
What a shame. Why didn't you stop me earlier? Let me go back and
Well,
share.
I didn't realize it. Somebody made a. You know, I'm
Okay.
juggling a bunch of
Okay.
things over
Okay.
here,
Okay.
and somebody just said something on the thing that I looked up, and sorry, I should
Okay.
have said something earlier.
I gotta go back and share screen. Share screen. Screen share. Share. Share.
There you go.
Hi, everybody. Let's start all over. No, let's not. That was the one where I said, hey, and it's me. And here you are standing trying to decide. And it was so good. I was using the cursor and pointing. Oh, you missed something. Here's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Okay. You can go back, catch this later. This is the top of Mount Stupid, and this is the Valley of Despair. And this is where I said, and I'm probably right about here. I realized I'm pretty stupid. Okay. I should never be here talking to you guys, but hey, maybe I do know something that I can tell you about. And then I said, here's my M13 because I wanted everybody to see it again. And then we were just talking about message composition and detail. Whether you're using one shot color or where are we? We're not even doing this right, are we? Whether you're using one shot color um, or LRGB, yeah, it's going to be pretty much the same. But some of these things that you can't see through here, okay, you can see them here, but without the narrow band that I had to use pretty much LRGB, monochrome imaging to get, one shot color couldn't have picked that up very easily. All right. And here I was when Toga rudely interrupted me to tell me that I was being a klutz. Okay. Are you a cell phone and tablet imager or a computer monitor and web imager, or can you handle blowing your images up and having your little astro imaging people pick at it? Okay. This is essentially the same picture, but it's blown up in three different levels. And believe me, I like this picture up here. I am a pretty good cell phone and tablet imager. When I show people my pictures on my cell phone, they say, hey, you're pretty cool. Unless they're like astro imagers and they say, oh, let's see it. Oh, look at that. How come it's got that? Oh, how come the stars aren't? How come you know what I mean? So the more demanding you are in your imaging, you may want other things. And it may be that one shot color does not deliver it as well as does um, LRGB monochrome imaging. Let's get some definitions out of the way here. Grayscale, um, bandpass transmission efficiency. I think this is all broken out a little bit better here. Grayscale, rule number one, all images are grayscale. All images are just shades of gray. The brighter something is, the more numbers it's got. Okay. There's just a bunch of rain falling in all the time. And these little cups are your pixels and they're grabbing. And depending on how big these cups are, they'll grab more of the rain or they'll grab less of the rain. But all sensors just gather information in gray, nothing in color. And then, just so we all have a common language here, this is what bandpass is about. The spectrum goes from blue to red, and it goes on either side, up further up. And your filters let in certain colors of light. This up here is a dedicated LRGB set, and this down here is a typical a color filter array. And the first thing you want to know is how wide is the band. A blue filter in this Astrodon series lets in from just below 400 to just about 520 something. Okay. Whereas in this same below 400 and it rises up and then it's still collecting light down in the 600s. Okay. So this is a broader band pass than this is. Notice it's cut off shorter. Okay. So band pass is how much of the spectrum is actually let in by that filter. The transmission is how much of the light that is coming in actually gets through the filter. And you can see that in this particular case, nearly 100% of the light is coming in, while in this particular case, what is that, 48% or something of the light of that particular color blue is coming in. This is how much of the light that could be coming in is actually coming in. And there's one little line here that's kind of hard to see. See this one here? This is the L line. That's an extremely wide band pass. So you see the difference between band pass and transmission. Two things, two words that we'll be coming back to later in our discussion. A third thing is efficiency. See how these things are going through and they're collecting? If these are little small pixels, and sometimes they are little small pixels, they can't get very much. If they're filling up the whole area, see this stuff here that's missing in between? What if there were a little further funnel up here to grab more of this? Grab from here to here. It would actually be grabbing more um, uh, light. And here is a graph of three different types of sensors, and you'll notice that they grab different amount of lights. A standard CCD might be grabbing 40-50%, turning 40 to 50% of these raindrops into collected water. uh, a blue plus CCD gets us up here, and a black thinned CCD is almost up here 90% up in the red there. And it's also picking up a lot of infrared that we don't necessarily want, stuff like that. But this is an important thing because later on we're going to be talking about how we are sometimes mistaking transmission for efficiency. You'll notice also that in no case are these things smooth across the top. The silicon or whatever it is that's gathered, the CMOS, that whatever is that's gathering this information, every time a photon hits it, it sets off a charge, and that charge is counted. Well, they're more responsive to blue or more responsive to red, and these charts tell you how are, how responsive they are to each other. Where'd we go? The next thing you know is one-shot color. One-shot color, as you may or may not know, has what's called a color filter array or a Bayer matrix. And usually it's a blue, green, red, and green. And those four go together to make a picture or to make a unit. And actually, these four over here go together. And any four cells actually contribute to each other. This is what this is a natural picture here. Number one is just a natural picture of the full color. And you can see it's got some parts that are particularly red and some parts that are particularly blue. Well, look what happens when you've got red light coming in and you're going through the red filter. All of the pixels that are underneath the red get their red light, and everything else is blank, nothing. And same thing with green, same thing with blue. And as a result, look at this red. This is actually number 3 down here. This red right here, everything's red. So there is nothing or virtually nothing in all the other pixels here. So 3 out of every 4 pixels is doing nothing on when it's imaging something red. Okay. And this becomes important later on. And it's a big part of the argument about why um, color sensors are not quite that sensitive. But at any rate, leave that as it may for right now. We're just going through the definitions. So that's how a color filter sensor works. On the other hand, you've got monochrome. Well, all sensors are monochrome. I already said that. But sometimes you put filters so that all of the light coming through is of a particular color. And for instance, this is what the grays, this is the gray scale of the red channel. This is the gray scale of the green channel. This is a gray scale of the blue channel. You'll notice that this area that's circled on all 3 of them is a lot brighter relatively here than it is down here or over here. And as a result, when you add them all together, you get a reddish area out here. And the red is actually brighter in almost everything, and that's why the nebulosity here is going to be red. But you'll notice, see how the blue, and it's hard to tell, particularly after it's been degraded by YouTube, but it's hard to tell. But you see the down here in the blue, these blue stars are bigger than they are over here in the green or up in the red, and as a result, I got blue stars or bluish stars because I put these 3 together into this, and depending on how their relative brightness is, their colors show up more. But all of the light came through. Now, back to broadband and narrowband. What's the difference between these two? You've already seen this and you've had that explained. You know what a band of band pass is. Well, there are some certain chemicals or elements that glow in in particular colors, and this would be a broadband is blue, but in hydrogen beta and in O3, which is right between blue and green, there's a particular spike that you can see. And there are filters that can capture either a wide range of colors or very narrow range of colors, depending on how they're built. So keep that in mind that there are different kinds of filters like that. And if you're really magic, what you can do is you can identify the light that you want and the light you don't want. The light you don't want is produced by that lamp on the street corner and all the lights coming from Las Vegas and all the lights of pollution. And it just so happens that until they actually convert over to full spectrum LED lighting, most of that light falls in particular ranges. What if you were to build a filter that could only pick up ranges in between there so that they could pick up this part up here or that part down there, but they wouldn't be picking up so much of the light in this range? This is called a light pollution filter, rather broad band passes on either side of the light pollution. And these are those same narrow band spikes. This is a triad filter from OPT. And you can see that it emphasizes, again, hydrogen beta, O3, hydrogen alpha, and S2. And so you get specific band passes. Okay. We're finished pretty much with the definition of terms. Tolga and Eric and Terry, and how are we doing? Any questions?
We're doing good. There was a question about Astrodon filters. I don't know if you want to go there.
Well, ask me the question. I'll see if I'm covering it.
Is it true that Astrodon RGB filters, the exposure time of all the filters will be the same to create an RGB, true color?
Yeah,
he's talking about the E series versus the I series.
Yeah. I don't know the specifics of it. I would really rather have you look to Astrodon's website, who owns them now. But they can tell you the specifics. But remember when we were looking at this right here? Okay, and you can see that some types of sensors have a strength over on this side, others are relatively weak over here, and they're different. What Astrodon did was to match the density of their filters to the strength of particular characteristic types of CCD sensitivities. So they adjusted the transmission. Yeah. Band pass. They didn't adjust. They adjusted the transmission for the efficiency. Okay. And that's the difference between the E series and the I series. Now, how much does it matter? There's another way to adjust this, just expose for less time or more time. So it's not mandatory you do it this way, but I've got Astrodons in both my imaging rigs, home and in the desert. And yeah, they're basically, they come out pretty close by just doing what I'm supposed to do. And I take about the same amount of exposures on each one. So does that answer your question?
I think so. There's another question. Ryan asks, are you going to be touching on gain or ISO settings in your talk?
No, that I don't think so, because gain and ISO are a function of, but they're usually used in, well, they're used in both CCD and in CMOS cameras. But which filter you put in front of that sensor is a completely different question. And I'm talking about which filter you're putting in front of it. You know what I mean? So, no, whether you've got high gain or low gain is a question about how you're happy with how your sensor is doing to get the right exposure in the right amount of time, and with the right amount of noise and things like that.
And plus, those settings will be very camera specific.
They would be. And I'm not familiar enough to be speaking of. Remember the Dunning-Kruger Hill? I'm like on the Dunning-Kruger Hill of gain and all that stuff. I'm probably like way back here because my cameras have pretty much set gains, and except for when I'm using my DSLR, and I just go to pretty much unity gain on that and just leave it at that. I go at 800 or 1600, and I don't experiment much with that. But I'm way back here. I'm not even smart enough to start making a lot of pronouncements about it. Okay, okay. Where are we? We've done that one. We've done that one. We've done that one. What is the main argument that you get into with um, one shot color versus LRGB? The answer is all related to the why do we use big scopes and why do we expose a long time? We use big scopes, big aperture scopes to get a lot of light, and we expose a long time to get a lot of light. It's kind of stupid to throw that light away. And the issue is, how much light are we throwing away by using one system over the other system? Let's make sure we all understand that what we're really interested in getting good astroimaging data is getting very good signal to noise. Now, anything that registers in our sensor is signal. But some of that is signal caused by photons coming from billions of light years away. And some of it is because it's a hot day today and there's gamma rays floating around and there's read noise in our electronics because we didn't pay enough for our camera. And we're not certain about what that is. And anytime you're not certain about what you're getting, that you call it noise. Even though it's really signal, it's we call it noise. Let's distinguish between um, heavenly night, heavenly light. Heavenly light is the stuff that we really are trying to capture. It's the stuff coming from the stars and the gas clouds out there, to stuff that we don't know exactly what it is. All right, the more stuff we get from the heavens compared to the camera and the heat and the everything else, the better. But at any rate, we can't afford to throw away light. And the people who argue against one shot color are arguing that we're throwing away lights. Let's examine that argument. Let's examine that argument. Remember, we had this over here, okay? And we've got red, green, and blue light comes through, but it hits the blue filter. And so none of these sensors are catching any of this wonderful red light that comes through. Okay, that's fine. But the green light that's coming through is getting caught, and the blue light's coming through is getting caught, but they're caught on different pixels. Opposed to that, we've got this system over here where we've got red and look at every single pixel is going to get to work here. Every single pixel is going to grab what part of that red light is coming to it. Every single pixel is going to be grabbing, and every single. So the argument is that with one shot color, three quarters or one half if you're in green, because half of these pixels are green or are filtered by green, is being rejected. And I wish I could stop doing that. This is a waste of light. And people are very adamant about it. That's a waste of light. Is that, well, I'm not ready for that yet. I got to explain a little bit better. These are blown up a little bit better so you can see it. This is this one right here. Remember, we started with this one, and this is just the red version of it. And you can see that 2/3 of our pixels are doing nothing. Okay, see down in the blue area under red, they're just white. There's no energy there at all. Okay, so we've wasted a lot of stuff. This is what the color filter array raw filter will look like, and you can see that it's there. But when you put it all back together again, you actually get something. Here, on the other hand, is just look at how solid that red. Look at every one of these is solid. Every pixel has been doing some work. Granted, it's just getting black here because there is no under green. There is no. It's only red up here, so there's no green energy here at all, and there's no. It's only red here, so there's no blue energy. Under luminance, however, there's lots of energy of all all the colors are contributing a little bit of something to the luminance. Okay, so this is what the red looks like over here. This is what the red looks like over there. And looking at it, which one of those would you rather have? Which one of those is throwing away more light? Well, that's a pretty good argument for those that favor LRGB imaging over one-shot color. One of the things you got to remember too is that it is not just red, green, and blue. Over here, it's red, green, and blue, but it's also luminance. You see the color, or you see the luminance along here? How much there is? Wow. When you're exposing luminance and when you're doing LRGB imaging, you are exposing probably half the time in luminance alone. Um, there is nothing being caught. All of the luminance is coming through all of the time when you're using a luminance filter, or 99% of it, or something like that. So 2/3 of the, over here, 2/3 of the light is being ejected. But over here, all of the red light, all of the green light, all the blue light's coming in. Okay, everybody's convinced that you're wasting a lot of light. Well, it ain't exactly like that. All right. There's a debayering algorithm, and it reconstructs colors from neighboring pixels. Okay, let's take this example up in the upper left hand corner up here, and you can see that there's a black area over here, and there's a blue area. See how it translates down here into blue, and the green translates into green, and the red translates into red? Well, when we just look at the red pixels, you can see that there's nothing here, and there's nothing here, because you can see that it's going to be blue and green. So that wouldn't be showing anything. All you're getting is these red spots. But that one spot starts to borrow information from all of the other spots around it. And it knows that, well, if all those spots are going to be mostly this or that or the other thing, it knows what it actually was. If it knows that all this is red and there's no blue or green in there, well, this whole area is going to be red, is what it decides. It's actually much more sophisticated than that. But when one of the things I noticed when I was doing this was, see how these two dots here, and then they change to over here, and then they change to over here, depending on whether you're in red, blue, or green. And see these three over here? I thought that was cute. But at any rate, you can see that the resolution you get down here is about the same, and you're getting all those colors just about the same, because in fact, they're they're borrowing data from right next door. Now, this means that the color data is not as resolved. But I want to remind the people that criticize one-shot color for this is that every time they bin 2 by 2, they're doing exactly the same thing. So when they're binning 2 by 2, they're also blurring their color data. And so maybe it's not such a bad thing that the debayering algorithm, which is a pretty smart algorithm, is doing what we do anyway. Okay. I'm going to summarize this, and then we'll ask for questions again. So the main argument, the summary of the main argument is that, hey, you're wasting a lot of light because you're only getting one color at a time on these pixels. Well, that's true, but you're only getting one color at a time on this pixel. Okay, when you've got the red filter here, all that green and blue light are getting, and when you're at blue, all the red and blue lights are getting, or when you're at green, all the blue, oh, this is hard to do, all the red and blue are rejected. Okay, so this sensor down here is actually on full time, whereas no, this is on full time too, but you're only getting 1/3 of the color anyway. So that's not a very strong argument when you really take it apart. Time for a break. How are we doing on questions?
We're doing. There are not that many questions, unless
Okay.
I missed any.
Okay.
People are just talking about, the same kind of conversation between mono and color, and there are a lot of congratulations over here for a book. So I just have to tell you that.
Maybe sometime I'll have time to look at my congratulations. But for now, let's continue.
But I wanted to add something. Here's what I want to say. If we take a exact sensor, a color version Imagine there was a monochrome version. We're not talking about two different cameras. We're talking about two cameras that have the same exact model sensor. One has a mono version and one has a color version. And imagine we have an hour and a half worth of time. If you take an hour and a half worth of one-shot color data versus half hour of red, green, and blue, you will have a better image with the mono camera. That's the point I wanted to make.
And if you're, well, one of the points I'm going to make later, if you're taking an LRGB, it will be even better.
Correct.
Okay. So, um, so boy, I sure would like to go over to the YouTube comments and see some congratulations, but back to work. There are other arguments that I think are just as telling, but I'm not so sure I've got the answers to them. Take a look at these two graphs. You've seen them a little bit before. Notice that's 100%. Notice that's 48%. And this one is 68 or something percent. And that one is whatever that is. Okay. I've actually squashed this one down, I think, so that they're the same. So the peaks here are the same. Well, people tell me, but look how this one's all spread out. So you're still getting that blue filter is still working all the way up. It's only working maybe 10%, but all the way up well into the green, it's still gathering light for you. And that green filter is going from here to there, right? And and okay, I can buy that. How do you explain the luminance filter? See how much more is coming through. The fact of the matter is that the a dedicated filter where you've got a 1 2 inch piece of glass or 1 1/4 inch piece of glass that's been coated properly is made with one manufacturing process. The other manufacturing process involves a series of masks. They're grids where chemicals I think are deposited. I'm not sure exactly how it's done, but and then you change masks and then you deposit different set or whatever it is. And in fact, there is less light coming through the color filter arrays, and that light is not nearly as cleanly defined as it is in the dedicated filters. That, however, is not quite as true as you might think. Now, I don't expect you to look at all these things and figure out, oh, yeah, this compare the. But the point is that there is no simple answer. Here is the Astrodon E series, and here is the I series, and you see that they're slightly different. Okay, but here's another filter. I don't recall which, but you'll notice that they vary. They're all over the ballpark. All right. So don't ask about whether color filter arrays, one shot color, or mono with LRGB is better. Ask about your specific camera, the transmission of your specific filters, which I think should be as close to 100% as possible, compared to the efficiency of your sensor. You've got to put all those into effect. And what we see too often is the argument over on cloudy nights or these other places where they're arguing about this, and um, as if all CFAs were the same, as if all dedicated filters were the same, as if all sensors were the same, and they are not. Now, I want to draw your attention down here to the lower right hand corner. Remember the I think we had this earlier. Yeah, here we go. You've got the red, green, and blue filters over here. And remember when I said that it's about the same? Because yeah, this one, every filter is working, but you've only got this filter working 1/3 of the time. Same thing here, same thing here. Meanwhile, this filter, and this filter are working 100% of the time, although they're only covering 1/4, 1/4, and 1/2 of the pixels. So you do the math on that, whatever it comes out to. I still think these guys win, particularly since I'm not all that fond of green. But um, look at this sucker over here. This is the luminance filter, and the luminance filter is letting in everything. And half the time you're playing with the luminance filter anyway. So if you're comparing RGB to color filter array, eh, it's it does you something, but it doesn't I don't know that you're going to see a lot of difference. But if you're adding a luminance filter to that, there is a while where you are getting a whole lot of light through, 100% of the light coming in all the time. And that really helps your signal to noise ratio. So color filters arrays may not transmit as much light, but it's not as simplified as that. You gotta throw into effect a whole lot of other things. So um, and color filter arrays may produce more noise. As Craig Stark explained in one article I went through for this presentation, see all these little black areas here? Okay, they've got to be interpreted. And interpretation, while it's good, isn't as good as the actual information. Okay, so as you can see, it's a lot of green here, and if you're imaging in space, you're not going to get a whole lot of substantially more green, but you're going to get more noise. And noise is the one thing you don't want when you're imaging. And so that interpolation of the empty pixels, according to Craig Stark and various other people I've talked to, and Tolga just testified that you're going to get a better picture in the long run by doing a straight RGB than you are with the one-shot color. Now, don't give up here, guys. I'm not selling you out just because you got a one-shot. Um, Other arguments: one-shot color has lower resolution. This may be a really particularly bogus argument that I want you to fight tooth and nail. Um, the explanation they give for that is only 1 in every 4 pixels is getting light. Well, that's not exactly true. All of the pixels are getting light. It's just that they're not all getting red, blue, and green light at the same time when they're under a color filter array. Also, you have to ask, how do you define resolution? If resolution is the number of the pixels in your image and how much of the sky each pixel covers, it's exactly the same. Okay. My DSLR camera gets, I forget what it gets. It gets 4,000 by 3,500 or something like that, whatever Canon 6D gets. And each one of those pixels delivers me some kind of information. The question is it real information or is it this interpolated information? And do I care? Each picture has as many pixels covering the same area of sky. So in one sense, it's the same. However, in one shot color, that information is not necessarily from the sky. It may be from the sky as interpreted by the pixels next door. So there may be a blurring. But as I pointed out, that blurring happens also in anytime you bin an image. Okay. So don't go too far down that road. Yeah, you get pretty good resolution with one shot color. We talked about the noise issue earlier. The color smearing is that effect I just talked about, where if there is a change in like at a star, there is a change between one pixel and another as to the color of the sky because there's a star or not a star there. That could be borrowed inappropriately when the color filter array interprets it through the debayering process. Sharpening and contrast then it can start being an issue because remember, when you define detail comes from the differences in the energy of a particular pixel. And when you have a region of pixels that have smeared energy levels because they borrowed from each other, you're probably not going to be as sharp. On the other hand, remember, as soon as you bin, you've given up that advantage, that argument. So anybody who's really holy sitting there saying, "Oh no, it's going to be a lot um, uh, less sharp, or it's not going to have the same contrast," it better not be binning. Okay. Um, Pre-processing and calibration is probably easier. The number of calibration frames you have to take. I mean, if you've got 4 filters that you're using, L, R, G, and B, you're going to have to take 4 sets of flats. You're going to, if their exposure times are a little different, you might have to take 4 sets of darks and things like that to calibrate them out. So, yeah, um, there's some arguments back and forth on that. So, we're going to do this one we know, and then we're going to go into some questions here. What do we want in an image? This is recapitulating from way back. We want message and composition. It's probably a push as far as that goes. Detail, contrast, color, low imperfections. It may make a difference, okay? But if you're not going to be getting that difference, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter if your car can go 180 miles an hour if you're never going to go more than 110, or more appropriately, I guess, 75. Um, are you a phone and tablet guy, kind of guy? Well, then do you really care that it can't be blown up to 17 by 40? If you're never going to blow it up to 17 by 40, some of these arguments that people are making are just arguing about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. And they're just baloney. As far as the ultimate image quality, my prejudiced announcement, and I don't know what YouTube is saying about it right now, is that dedicated and CFA can both tell a story and handle the composition. LRGB seems to hold an edge in the amount of light that can be gathered and its sharpness. It may lead to advantages in detail, contrast, and removing imperfections, and how large it can be displayed. RGB alone may or may not have an advantage, but all of the arguments we've seen so far, they're not nearly as clear cut as they sound when they're expressed by the true believers over on cloudy nights. Where are we right now on questions and things?
Oops, sorry, I'm fumbling with the button. So there's a question about one-shot color and narrowband filters.
Well, why don't you just hang on? We'll get to that.
Okay, I'm going to hold off on that.
But you know what? I think I just said that while there may be a difference at the higher end, there's a whole lot of other things to consider. Cost, setup, targets, acquisition, processing. And here comes one shot color. Um, Look at this rig. It's beautiful. Okay. It's beautiful. It's got a big old telescope and a nice focuser and a field flattener. And those of you who do one shot color don't know what this is, maybe, but that's $1,200 or something worth of machinery that holds $700 worth of filters, and that may be more than you've spent on your whole rig so far. You know what I mean? As far as cost, hey, these guys win. They win by a substantial amount. You can get a whole lot more mount by going one shot color. You got same budget. Maybe there's a better place to put $1,900 than this little machine and the little pieces of glass that go in it. Weight. See how this stuff hangs off the back here? The further back it gets, the more you've got hanging off, the more mount you're going to need, the more chance you've got for flexure here, the more problems you're going to have getting back focus just right, the more problem you're going to have. Hey, he doesn't even have an off-axis guider here. You're going to get flex. You're going to have additional cables, and you're going to have additional power running to various devices. Now, a filter wheel doesn't take all that much power, and it usually gets by with one or two, I think, cables at the most, one, I think. Um, but if you start adding too much stuff up here, you're going to have to get more mount. Cost and setup. Oh, and you don't have tensions about where it's going to rotate on you accidentally and stuff like that. Hey guys, it costs less and it's easier to set up one shot color. They win. Targets, generally speaking, um, they can both shoot the same kinds of things, particularly in pretty space objects. But I want to talk about a couple of things here in particular. Transients. This is a comet. That's a comet. I forget what its name is. P427372. I don't really remember. And it's really hard to take pictures of comets with LRGB systems because see, all those stars, they're moving or they're staying put and the comet's moving through it. And had I been trying to take this with LRGB, that would have been really hard to do. So, hey, one shot color wins pretty easily here. Also, there are times, and I'm going to call it quick and dirty, and I don't mean to be at all disrespectful, but you see this poster over here? This is my favorite poster, and it's on the wall of my observatory because one night I decided to take all 110 Messier objects in the same night. And being stupid, I took it in LRGB. So each of those little snapshots there represent an L, an R, an G, and a B, all stacked together appropriately. And that was really stupid. It was like really rushed trying to get all those pictures taken and everything else like that. I managed to get it done thanks to M30 finally getting up above the wall of the observatory. But um, had I had a one-shot color camera, it would have been a much more leisurely evening. Guys, it's easier to take a one-shot color picture. It just is easier to take it. There's nothing more you can say about it. Um, Narrowband, these are all pictures taken from my backyard. There are something like 20 million people living between me and the beach. And the beach is only 48 miles away. Okay, now that counts going up to Santa Barbara, down to San Diego, and stuff like that. So, but come on, I got a light dome worse than any of you guys, or as bad as any of you guys probably. But these are all out of my backyard. And could I have taken this with the one-shot color camera? Maybe, maybe not. It would have been very, very difficult. There would have been a lot of wasted light because, well, I'll get to that in a few. But in narrowband, no. This is what Craig Stark says about it. For line filter, narrowband is also called line filter. Should you put one-shot color cameras at the top of your list? No, he says. While one-shot color cameras have their strengths, they run counter to the demands of line filter imaging, narrowband imaging. If given a choice between line filter imaging on the color and monochrome versions of the same camera, you would be foolish to choose the color version. Okay, so can it be done? Yes. And you will have guys on cloudy nights that say, hey, look, I did manage to get a narrow band picture. That's fine. And there are people who row across the Atlantic. Okay. And there are people who hike across the United States. They walk across the United States. It can be done. And congratulations for doing it. I mean, if that's what you want to do. But if you want to take a picture, you're probably a narrowband picture. You're probably going to want to take a monochrome camera to use your narrowband. There are some other things that color cameras are coming into their own, particularly with the work of the triad filters and the astronomic. I think's got one. Um, Remember, we talked earlier about the we talked earlier about where the light pollution bands are. What if you were to design, like this is one of those light pollution? These have all been, this is one of these light pollution filters. These have all been rearranged so that they're all the 400 um, are together, all the 700 pass bands are together so that all of these lines are pretty much matching. Why is that one out there? I don't know. Maybe I forgot to do that one. But the point is, see this gap where the ugly light pollution is? It fits in here. Or the triad filter, this is the older triad filter, not the newer one they have, but you see that it gets light in here and in here. And this overcomes one of the major problems with narrowband filtering with one-shot color. If you're using the narrowband filter with one-shot color, the only light you could possibly get in there is red. And yes, only the 1/4 of your pixels that pick up red would be picking up anything. However, with these filters, they are picking up both the blue green and the red or whatever they are. This is a light pollution filter as opposed to the triad narrow band multipass filters. Um, they can pick this stuff up, and they've got all three of their pixels working at the same time. Now, having said that, the modern version, which I think this was taken with the modern version of the updated version of the try, that's $1,000, I think. All right. So remember what I said about inexpense, and about cost. Boop, there goes that. All right. Oh, about acquisition. There are some things that are the same. Oh, have we got any questions? Because that's pretty much it on targets.
Yep. We're good. Just again, people are talking about, I do this, I do that. I
Yeah.
use one shot color, I use monochrome, and
Yeah.
like you said, we're not saying you can't do it.
Not only are we not saying you can't do it, but I think you're smart to do it in many cases. And that's going to be, if you want to jump ahead a few minutes here, that's going to be my conclusion. For most of us in the hobby, it's probably a good idea to do it that way. Regardless of what I've said so far, um, yeah, that's probably true. Um, so feel good about it, guys. You're doing a good job, and girls. During acquisition, there are some things that are the same no matter what. And there's some things we'll talk about here. Okay, things that are the same. When you're balancing your mount, okay, it's the same whether you've got a filter wheel or not. Yeah, I mean, you got a filter wheel will cause you to have to balance more and it's heavier up there and stuff. But hey, your polar alignment's going to be the same if you're running it one shot color or monochrome. It's going to look the same. Your computer communications, your guiding, your target selection, hey, you can do the same thing either way. So let's not worry about which is better for all of those kinds of things. Um, for your exposure plan, this is an exposure plan for one shot color, and this is an exposure plan. These incidentally are postings from the book, because I got really lazy and didn't feel like making up new illustrations. Look at how much more complicated the exposure plan is down here in the lower left, for a M42 with a red, green, luminance, and blue filter, how things have to be timed out so that your luminance is right up where it's as high as possible. And it's just more complicated. See, I'm getting different exposures, different binning, and all this other stuff. And over here, nope, just take the dang picture for me, would you? Just take the picture. Please just take the picture. Um, so you got multiple filters. There are some weather implications with an exposure plan and LRGB. See this? 12, 12, 18. Where's my blues? Oh, blue. See, I screwed this up. See where it says 2? I should have said 12. But at any rate, hey, and that's in the book. I'm going to have to fix that. Um, the What if I get my 12 and my 12, and then when it's come time for the 18, the clouds come in? I didn't get a picture that night at all, did I? Okay, that's a problem with LRGB imaging. Now there are ways around that, um, and you can go either the way this one is built with a R R R R G G G G B B B B B. Take them, or you can take LRGB, 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 and so you've got the same number of exposures all the way through. Or guys, if you want to make it simplified, just use a one-shot color camera. You take as many as you get, and then when the clouds come in, you've still got a chunk of images that you can put together and get a data set out of. So it's actually easier to make an exposure plan out of a one-shot color camera. Calibration frames, boy, it's a lot easier because you've got one set of flats, one set of bias and darks, and that's about it. I think I got a slide to that effect. Um, and so it's going to be a lot easier to do. Whereas each of the different filters you're going to use, you're going to have to get some other qualifying things on it, some other calibration frames. Focus, refocusing. Well, when you got a one-shot color camera, you should probably refocus every hour or so, just for the heck of it. When you're got a filter wheel in front of you, though, you might have to readjust for each filter. Now, there are ways around that, but every time I say there are ways around that, remember I am saying, but if you want to complicate your life, you can do whatever it is to complicate your life and fix that, compensate for it. Um, you can have timed focusing. Basically the two can be the same, but when you've got filters you've got to adjust for, it's going to be more complicated. File management. Well, there's a set of files for a one shot, no, for a, I think it's for an LRGB imaging session. And you can see that you get a whole lot of different types of files, and they're all going to have to be put together someplace, and you're all going to have to keep track of which one's which. Now, come on, it's really not that hard. The program names the files for you. All you got to do is click through and pick out the ones you want and stuff like that. Whereas in a one-shot color image, you'd have 30 files, all the same thing. All right, and you don't have to get all that tricky with it. And the exposures. Um, Remember, I talked earlier about the different types of calibration exposures. For color, you need one set of bias, one set of dark, one set of flats, one set of lights. Boom, you're done. For LRGB, you need a whole lot more. All right. For each binning level, you might need different biases and darks. For each filter level, you might need different flats. For sure, you're going to need different flats for each filter. And, you know, it's more complicated. All right. On the other hand, here is the dial of a washing machine. And you'll notice that it's not really complicated to wash, no matter how many different ways you got to wash it. You just put the little black dot to wherever you want to go and you pull the knob and off it goes. It doesn't really much matter how complicated things might seem if you've got a session manager like SGP or any one of a number of others that you just tell it, hey, go take these things while I go take a nap. And off it goes and it takes those things without really bothering you. Okay. So yeah, it looks a lot more complicated, but is it? Not really. It's not really all that much complicated. All right. Everything that I've said so far says that LRGB and one shot color either work the same, or one shot color is less expensive, easier on the equipment, easier to use. And now I'm going to change things. See where I said down here that we just needed one set per whatever? Yeah, but how big is the set? How long is each exposure? If in fact you're losing light because your filters are not letting in as much light, or because an awful lot of what they're letting in is green and you're not really all that much in favor of green, or because you don't have anything in luminance which is letting everything in all at the same time, well then how many exposures are you going to have to take to compensate for the fact that you've got a bare matrix instead of dedicated filters? And most of us find that in order to get the type of quality you get in a dedicated LRGB set, you have to take a whole lot more one shot color pictures. And because of that, the exposure time is actually less in a LRGB um, set than it is in a CFA set. We talked a little bit about processing before, and I'm not going to go through it again, but because you're trying to fill in a lot of pixels in the Bayer interpretation, you're probably getting a little more noise because you're probably not getting as much light in each particular image. You're probably going to get a little bit more noise. And because of that, your processing itself is going to be different. Your color matching is going to be a little bit different. You notice how when this says blue, it means blue. Okay, maybe there's a little overlap, but not much. When it says green, it says green. When it says red, it says red. What is green here? Halfway into blue, halfway or two-thirds into the red. All right. What's happening here? Well, you know what? You may get a little bit of color smearing and stuff like that. These are important things to think. But remember, I showed you that there are many different graphs of the same thing. So it's not important so much generically what your color filter array versus a dedicated LRGB set of filters is. It's what your particular set of will match with your camera. Which one should you choose? Well, it really depends on what you want more than anything else. Okay. I would say that if you are learning astroimaging, your one shot color will more than last you. All right. When you get to be as good as Jerry Rodriguez, okay, remember he's using one shot color in all those DSLRs of his. Remember Tony Hallis went back to using his DSLR. All right, which are one shot colors. You can make them into other things, but honest guys, you're doing fine. And you're probably going to get more data than you can process quicker, less expensively using one-shot color. If, however, you get to the point where you can see that you're doing more work than you maybe need to in that processing, and you can see that you're still getting noise even after all this, you might want to consider stepping up to dedicated LRGB imaging. And that, folks, is that. Any questions?
No, we're doing good. We don't have that many questions. Unless I missed some. If I missed a question, guys, please post it again. But I wanna throw a little twist here, if I can.
Okay.
I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm gonna introduce something that you didn't talk about, which is Kodak has this sensor that's called sparse color. It comes. So far, I'm only familiar with one version. It's the KAI 8050 SC. I know SBig makes one, but it's a pretty interesting idea. Let me share my screen, and it's somewhere between mono and. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So this sensor comes in all three versions. It comes in monochrome, it comes in regular bare color, and it comes with this third version that's called sparse color filter pattern. And as you can see, it has green, red, blue filters, but it also has clear filter. I shouldn't say filter, clear pixels. So it's giving you a little bit more than a regular RGB bare. So with this filter, you should be. It'll for narrowband imaging. It'll be much better. Like if you were set on a color, I don't want to use filters. I want to do one-shot color imaging, but I also want to do narrowband imaging. This may be something to be considered because it's got no filter pixels on top of the red one. So I just wanted to throw a little twist there. It's not very well known. Just wanted to throw it out there.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else have anything that we need to talk about?
I'm checking. I don't think we have any questions.
Okay. Before we sign off, I want to remind you all that we are working on some solutions to our software problems. We thought we had it. You will occasionally get notices from the YouTubes that says, hey, there's a TAIC session going on. That's us practicing with new software. And we thought we had one that worked this time, but obviously we didn't, and that caused the delay in our start tonight. We're sorry about that, but we're trying at it. Are we ready to sign off, Tolga? Actually, who's got control of this? I've got control of this.
You do.
Yeah. Okay. We got everything. And what was that about my book? My book is about Sequence Generator Pro, and I just saw it for the first time last night, and I haven't actually seen the book. I just saw it being advertised. Somebody at my Riverside Astronomical Society club meeting came up and he said, "Hey, you got a book?" I go, "Yeah," and that's the first time I've seen it, and I was excited about it. So it'll be out in a few months, and you'll be able to read it if you want. But I can't get to the comments right now. So, but thanks everybody for saying it's good stuff.
I ordered one
Already. Oops, I probably shouldn't be showing that, should I? I'm not showing. I'm not sharing. I just had. Okay, cool. Then I'm going to stop the broadcast, and we're going to go. Not what's the other live? We're going to go off the air. Good night, everybody. Right. Oh, wait a minute. You guys have to get ready for the transit of Mercury. What is it, 113 days from now or something like that? Mercury is going to go in front of the sun, and it might burn up, and you want a picture of it burning up when it no, it won't do that, but it'll go in front of the sun, and it takes certain techniques in planning and certainly different techniques for imaging it. And next week TJ Connolly will be here and he'll be telling us all about that. And so please be here for that. Okay. Good night, everybody.